Welcome. Today I am speaking with director and actor Markian Tarasiuk. He recently directed Hunting Matthew Nichols, I don't know how to describe it, a horror, true crime vibes. What do you want to tell the audience about your film?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's you just kind of said it right there. It's a little hard to describe, but I like to describe it as a prestige horror mockumentary. So we take elements of what or what we are so used to these days on Netflix with like true crime documentaries, flip it a little bit on its head, uh, go into horror land through the film. And yeah, I guess another way to describe it is kind of like your 2026 version of Blair Witch Project a little bit. That's what we've been described as, and any comparison I can get to that film is a compliment. So yeah, if you're into that kind of found footage, this is the movie for you.
I watched the screener last night, and I am glad I didn't watch it with my wife because I like camping and I like going to cottages. We would never leave the city ever again after watching.
I know. I'm not really down for camping in a tent anymore after filming my own movie. So I hear what you're saying.
So, what was your introduction to the horror genre when you were younger?
Oh man, that's a great question. I mean, I think I wasn't as like into horror per se. Like when I was a kid, a lot of people are like horror buffs and I was on the periphery. I remember though my dad specifically introducing me to the Indiana Jones and like Raiders of the Lost Ark and the last, that the melting shot I is seared into my brain. And I think that is my first like really like distinct memory of horror. So like Indiana Jones is not a horror movie per se, but that moment is just so the way his hat falls down and it came out that I was like, "Oh, I like that." Whatever that was, that practical effect, and I just can see it in my brain so clearly right now. So I'd say that was my first introduction in cinema to horror elements. And then after that, as a teenager, I started to really like seek out those types of horrors. So when you're talking about like Friday the 13th. I went through all the classics, and especially on Spike TV, I remember around Hollywood, around Halloween, was these reruns of Friday the 13th, Hellraiser, Freddy, Nightmare on Elm Street. I just got introduced to those so quickly and was so terrified of them and loved them at the same time. They evoked this like weird, you know, part of myself, I guess. I don't know without sounding too weird here. Just like it just kind of like tantalized me. And I always knew that I wanted to eventually go down that path.
I mean, kids love to be scared, and I mean
Yeah.
that you mentioned Indiana Jones. PG-13 was created for the second movie in that series, right? Like, so
Yes.
it's all about giving kids the scares. So yeah.
Yeah, I know Steven Spielberg was part of that, getting that PG-13 rating, like maids, because I've read about that whole thing. Just so, yeah, our movie, fortunately, who knows, is rated R. So, I remember sneaking into rated R movies when I was a teenager. So if some kids sneak into my movie, I'll be so jacked.
That is the goal. That is the goal.
It's the goal,
Now,
right? Yeah.
you both act and direct this film. How's it sort of juggling those two really intense roles in the film?
Yeah, I mean, this one is really specific. I think with Hunting Matthew Nichols, because I'm playing myself in the movie,
Mhm.
it was maybe easier than it would be in like a traditional formatted cinematic quality movie because what I was able to do as a director, but also playing a character of myself in the film, was direct the scenes in a way I wanted them to go, but doing that live in the scene. So if I wanted something from Miranda, for example, instead of giving her the direction, I would give her the line or change up the blocking, right? So it's like I was forcing her hand into playing with me as an actor because I was like, okay, I want this, I want her to move her here, I want her to like feel this way. So I'm just going to change my line because she's such a good actor that she was able to change on the fly and knew the rules of engagement, which was improvisation. So it's funny, it's like it was hard and I don't ever really want to do it again, to be honest with you. Just because it's this like my brain by we shot for 12 days. My brain was like doo doo at the end of that process because I was just doing so many things. But um, you know, this one was a little easier because of that fact that I was able to improvise with my actors, and everybody was so good and playing along so well that it wasn't that difficult, I think, at the end of the day.
But having watched it, there's a real organic nature to the scenes and the flow. So it feels like very in the moment, feels very natural. So what he did worked. So
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that comes down to encouraging all my actors to improvise and giving them the freedom. I remember having these conversations early on in the process about what we're about to do with our actors, and I said, in real life, it's funny in television especially, but movies as well too. I find more on TV, it's like the lines are so set, they are so dialed in, they are so you speak, I speak, you speak, I speak. And I said that doesn't happen in real life ever. I don't know. People cut each other off. Like people stumble, people mess up words. That's life. And I don't know why in TV we're so dialed in, or in film sometimes. So I said, if as soon as I gave the rule to the actor, I said, as soon as you want to come in, as soon as the thought hits your brain that you need to speak, just speak.
mhm.
And if I'm not done speaking, I'm going to ask you to quiet down. Like if I really want to get my point out, I will get louder and I'll quiet you down, right? So that I really encourage that kind of like, don't wait for me to finish my line. If you want to speak, just come right on in. And that's the exercise we started doing on set that just everybody got really used to it. Especially, I mean, Miranda and I got into a really good groove with that kind of, banter.
Now you filmed this in on Vancouver Island. British Columbia is the home to a lot of real life disappearances.
Yeah.
It Victoria was literally where the word satanic panic was coined. I read from
Yes.
an article about Victoria in the 80s. How did that inform your process when directing and when sort of building this film?
I mean, I think when it came down visually or aesthetically to the movie, I stood by putting this on Vancouver Island and in the Pacific Northwest forests because of how incredibly beautiful but haunting it is. Those old growth forests have a history to them. And we were talking about camping, and I've done camping. I'm from Manitoba, just a completely different kind of forest
Mhm.
where it doesn't have that same haunting quality to it, that same historic quality to it. And so I just knew that because I am a transplant into Vancouver and lived there for 12 years, that nature and that landscape was foreign to me, right? When I wasn't used to that and those forests. So when I came out there, I was like, wow, this is like beautiful, but also like scary. And I've never seen a horror movie take advantage of a Pacific Northwest forest like we do, in the movie, or that I tried to do. And then add on top of that, Matthew, you're right that like Victoria, the Satanic Panic of the 80s, a lot of people don't know. And so we did a lot of reading about that. So Sean, our writer, knew about that. So when we talk about the panic happening in the town, that is very much real, right? And so our blurred lines of reality, I think, pushed as far as we could with this movie, and the Satanic Panic was one of them. The fact that like Vancouver Island is known to be like the most haunted place in the world because it lives on the fault line.
Mhm.
So there's that theory that there is a path to the underworld. And that's why Victoria is so haunted because we're on this fault line, this crack in the earth to the underworld. So that was just all ripe to me to put into a narrative and put into a story. And I'm just so proud that it's also Canadian and a place that's very, very dear to me. I love Vancouver Island.
Now, the trope of the missing person is one that people really engage with. I mean, and it's been in film and cinema since like The Lady Vanishes all the way up to films like Gone Girl. Um, What do you feel this? Why do you feel this type of story really resonates with audiences?
I was actually talking about this in another interview. Similar question, and I had to really think about it because you're right. There is this obsession we have culturally with missing people, and I think it's we are drawn naturally into mystery, and when somebody vanishes without a trace, or I think as a society we become obsessed with it because it's an unanswered. It's like the Amelia Earhart thing of like, this is impossible. People just don't disappear. We need to know what happened. And there's this like, no, we need to know in order for that story to have closure. And I think as human beings, it's our nature and it's my nature that I have to have closure on everything in my life. Like this happened, whether it's like a relationship or, a familial relationship or something else that something goes wrong and those answers need to be found. And that's the tagline of our movie. Not all answers want to be found because we're always seeking those answers and filling in the gaps. So when there's, I think this natural thing that humans do is like when I don't know something, I have to figure it out. And missing people is just one of those things that I think you put yourself in their shoes of like, could I just disappear without a trace one day? Could that happen to me? Could I be one of those people? So there's a bit of that, what if that was me quality, I think, to it too, that we're just so enraptured by. Yeah.
Now, horror often operates as like a mirror, like societal mirror. You have the Red Scare films of the '50s, like Body Snatcher, Body Snatchers, Eraserhead, and Suspiria in the '70s with their counterculture otherness. To internalize horror like Misery or metatextual commentary like Scream in the '90s. In a film landscape where we have literally have multiple horror movies winning Oscars this recently,
Huge. Yeah.
yeah, it's like it feels like it's a more relevant genre than ever before. What are you looking for audiences to? How are you looking for audiences to engage, and what are you looking for them to take away from Hunting Matthew Nichols?
For me on this one, if you want to talk about the mirror being held up, I think I really wanted to hold the mirror up into the way that we consume true crime media right now. I when I was shaping this narrative with Sean and I gave him so many true crime, I'm inevitably being compared to the found footage genre. I get it, and I'm not gonna say, oh, that's that's not great. But honestly, when we were writing it, I was sending Sean documentaries. I wasn't sending him horror movies to like get inspiration from. And I'm hoping that I could be compared one day to some of these big documentaries, and we shaped the narrative around, um, like, uh, um, oh, well, it's escaping me right now. Oh, Murder on Middle Beach. There we go. The HBO documentary about where this kid, well, he's a young man now. His mom got murdered when he was a kid, and he films his own journey of trying to figure out what happened to her. And it's an amazing documentary. It's totally true, unlike ours. But I was watching that documentary being like, this is so odd for me to watch as an audience member, watch this young man process this trauma in real time. It
Mm-hmm.
felt invasive. It felt uncomfortable. Same with the Nexium documentary that was made on HBO. It was watching these people go through their trauma and process this stuff in real time. And it's a voyeuristic quality that I'm watching these people suffer on Netflix, suffer on HBO, suffer, and I'm being entertained by it. And the editing is being made to make it more entertaining, making their pain more entertaining. And so I'm very at a crossroads with the way that we're just throwing this stuff out there. Like, it's, ooh, tonight's my true crime Friday with a glass of white wine and watching somebody go through the worst time of their lives. I I don't know if I love it, but I watch it. That's the thing too. It's like I'm not above it. And that's what Hunting Matthew Nichols is to me, is creating almost the satirical view of I know how these documentaries work. They hit these beats, and it's also horrifying to watch. That's why now it's a horror movie, because I do believe that these things are horrifying. And so ours is a little bit more hyperbolic with its horror at the end, but that's the mirror, I think, that in the format in which I'm presenting this horror movie is is hopefully to make people think a little bit about what we're watching and how also easy it is to recreate, because these things are all the same. And so my challenge to Sean was, can we create a true crime documentary like it's being presented on HBO from scratch and trick people? And a lot of people, when they don't know anything about this movie, which is the best way to go into it, is they're buying it because they're so used to these story beats happening, right? So yeah, that's a long-winded answer there for you about what the mirror is to me today in media.
Well, and I mean, having watched it, the balance that you strike in the pacing and the structure is so good because when that twist comes, it really hits hard.
Yeah.
So, like, you really worked magic. Now, you mentioned found footage, and when you talked about the Blair Witch Project, um, and there is an element of found footage here, but like you said, it's really in the same sense as there's always is in these kinds of
Yeah.
true crime stories. You're using elements of bits and pieces. Why do you feel that that genre, that tool of filmmaking seems to be going through like a revival in the last few years?
Oh yeah. I think it's having a revival, honestly, out of necessity, because it's cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And it's why I did it, you know, because you can create storytelling with a lot less, and with this found footage lens. And I think right now we've lost in Hollywood, we've lost the middle class of movies. Either we're big tentpole movies or we're down to low budget stuff. It's very rare to find those $8 to $20 million movies these days. And we experience that in our pitching. Either our pitch had to be over 20 million bucks or under 5 million bucks. Nobody wanted anything in the middle. And I think that's why found footage, because there's so many good filmmakers out there, indie filmmakers who are trying to figure out how to break into the market. Found footage is just such a great way to do it. And I think we're back. Everything is circular. We're back to found footage right now. We're going to come through a renaissance a little bit. And this happens every about 15 years, right? You had it with Blair Witch. The cycle went away. Paranormal Activity made the next cycle. And now we're coming into our third cycle of the post Blair Witch era. So I think it's just, by necessity, but I think at the same time, and also why I made it, was you can, when done well, you have an opportunity to really tell a good story, because the found footage, or that mockumentary element, that filmmaking trick, why I love it so much is it just lends itself to authenticity, because it allows us to see a story through a lens in which we are used to seeing, which is every day the phone, right? Like just people f filming something. It seems real, it feels familiar, and that's why I think it's so scary too at the end of the day.
Now, one of the elements of the marketing around this film has been like an alternative reality game kind of element where there's clips and stuff that present as real life narrative, real life components. How is that as a director and a performer, how do you feel that elevates the story for somebody who's going into this film?
We've had discussions about this, and a lot of people, it's funny, online people love it or hate it. And a lot of people, when we go with this alternative reality, what you're saying, marketing is, I know it's not real. You didn't trick me. You didn't trick me. We get this really visceral response of, this is fake. At no point did we say it was real. The presentation in which we are offering this story is, and how I describe it in all to my marketing meetings and pitches, is this is the WWE of cinema. Because we made a found footage mockumentary and a reality for ourselves, we're out there, like wrestlers playing these characters. I'm playing a character of myself. We're presenting this as if it's real, but at no point are we, if somebody asks me, Markian, point blank, are you trying to sell this movie as real? I said, no, we're having fun. and we're presenting an alternate reality. And yeah, like you said on our website, there's like a video game you can play where it's very clear that this is a narrative story, but it's paired with all this stuff and extra footage, deleted scenes and characters because I wanted to, and why I'm a filmmaker or storyteller is you create worlds, right?
Mhm.
Whether that's something like Star Wars, which is huge, billions of dollars, or Hunting Matthew Nichols, a small little thing. I want to have the same fun that George Lucas has, but in my own little reality and my own bubble of this story because it's just so much more fun to create and to consume as an audience member. And I hope just people go to our website, get involved in our world that we're creating, and hopefully one day, we do have plans for an incredible sequel. Sean's done such a good job writing. I hope we get to finish this story out because the second one gets into all the questions that everybody has after, the first movie. We've got it all. We know we want to finish this whole thing off. Yeah.
I'm very excited. Now you are getting a pretty large scale release. You're working with Drop Shock Pictures and Moon 7 Films independently bringing this to a wide theatrical release. What's that experience been like working with them?
Yeah, I mean, Moon 7, so DropShock is like the company we produced with, and which includes me. I'm credited as a producer. And then Moon 7 came on to do the distribution along with the Fithian group, with John Fithian, Patrick Corkin, Jackie Brenneman, and they are former members of the National Association of Theater Organizations. And they've been looking for ways to connect filmmakers and producers with exhibitors because obviously in this new marketplace, theaters are having a tough time. And they're also having a tough time getting titles because of the new streaming platform that, and it's the pressure that we went through was don't go to theaters. Don't. The streamers and all these people warn you and tell you don't do it. And they try to get you to make offers to not go to theatrical because they don't make money off the theaters, right? Not like streaming. So nobody on the distribution side is encouraging you to go to theaters. And because we were creating this world, it was something that, and I think every filmmaker has this dream of going to theaters, but that wasn't that opportunity wasn't coming up at all. And we were holding out because I said, no, 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 guys, like I think we can do this. And John, the Fithian group, came along, saw the movie, and said, yes, you guys should be in theaters, and we're going to help you get there. So with Moon 7 connecting now and with the Fithian group and us, we actually went around and pitched in person to every major exhibitor in the US, AMC, Regal, B&B, Marcus, Cinemark, Harkins. We did in-person pitches about why this movie should be in theaters and why we want to create a new pipeline for filmmakers to make it to theaters and not give up on this model. We just need to find a new way. So after these pitches, they agreed, and we've been working directly with the exhibitors. It's this brand new thing we're doing is they're talking to us as the filmmakers about our story, about our marketing, about what our world that we created and are getting involved instead of bringing in a distributor or somebody in the middle to tell us, no, 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 guys, we know we've done this before. You don't do it like that. Here's where our paid media is going. Shut up. That's what distributors do. We're not doing that. We're just like working with them so closely and are in contact with all the exhibitors every day. So it's been hard and busy, but at the same time incredible because I have such a hope for filmmakers going forward. If this model can be repeated, we're going to see just so much more cool things in theaters is where I like to go. And I'm not giving up on the theatrical model like a lot of people have.
It's like horror movie is especially benefit. Like it's great to be able to watch a movie from home on your couch or whatever, but in the theater, in the cinema, just the immersiveness of the big screens and the sound. I still remember in 94, 95, when Event Horizon came out,
Yeah.
not being able to go to the washroom alone. My girlfriend at the time and I would have to wake each other up in the middle of the night and take each other to the washroom because we were afraid that like the monsters from that movie
Yeah.
were going to get us. We were adults. We were not
Yeah.
kids. We were full adults in our own apartment. You don't get that from watching something on your
No.
couch.
You don't. Quentin Tarantino, I saw like a thing recently with him, and he says He loves television. He watches like Landman. He was talking about these shows. He's like, the thing about television or like watching at home is I forget about it. He's like, I can't name you that episode or that streaming movie I saw 6 months ago. What was it? But like you just said, Matthew, from 95, you still remember that. And I still remember all those movies that I saw growing up that stuck with me in a cinema. You can't repeat that. And that's why I like when I say, this art form's never going away. It's because when you have something so special like that, an experience in a theater, and Timothée Chalamet got as roasted recently. Ballet and opera are still around. Yeah, maybe not as popular as they used to be, but why is it still around? It's because that's an experience you can't replicate, and it will always be around. So, the same thing with movies and the same thing with horror is because it's a communal experience, there's no better place to do it than the theater. You're right.
Now, last question for you. You've told the first part of Hunting Matthew Nichols. You've
Yeah.
got plans for a second part. Is there some other project, some dream project that you would love to bring to the screen?
Okay, if you're talking dream, dream, dream,
Yeah.
one day it's so far away because it's going to take hundreds of millions of dollars to do. My dad and one of my favorite movies of all time is, I think it's 1960. I'm going to get the year wrong, 1962. It's with Yul Brynner, Tony Curtis. It's called Taras Bulba. And it is the story of a Ukrainian Cossack. Uh, Gogol wrote it. Taras Bulba is a very Ukrainian novel. I would like to redo that film. Because the Ukrainian warriors are some of the most cinematic warriors you've ever seen, and people don't know about them. And I would like to do it not in the style of 300, but something akin to that.
Mhm.
And I think with the war in Ukraine right now, in the zeitgeist, I would like to show a Ukrainian heroic historical piece that is as Hollywood and big budget as you could get. So one day, I'm saying it now for the first time out loud, that's a project that down the line, hopefully one day I can adapt and resurrect. And Yul Brynner is so good in that movie, by the way. Go check it out if you can find it somewhere. But yeah, that would be my like dream project, and I could die happy after doing that.
Hopefully, this is just the first step towards you bringing that to the big screen.
We can hope. We can hope. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for chatting with me today, and everybody go out and see Hunting Matthew Nichols.
Yes. Thanks, Matt. Thank you.